Welcome to the AI Applied podcast. Today we're talking all things Anthropic. There is an absurd amount of news about this company today. Specifically, they have a new Fluency index that Connor has been researching heavily. They've also made a recent acquisition into a computer use company that I'm personally pretty excited about, just based off what I'm using. That's Vercept that they acquired. And they also are in a high stakes standoff with the Department of Defense right now. So there's a lot to cover. Connor, I'm going to kick this over to you to start it off. Tell us about their Fluency index they've released, because I think this actually is one of those areas that is very applicable for people applying AI to their careers right now.
Well, that's the thing, Jaeden. On this podcast, as you and I love to do, right? It's like, really, how does this apply to how people work every day? And I thought this was such an interesting one. So Anthropic, released this AI Fluency Index, and they just like talk about essentially kind of like, just to, I don't know, simplify it a little bit maybe. It's really like, who are the power users? Like, what are they doing and how are they doing it and stuff like that? And the thing that a couple of things that just kind of caught my attention right away. By the way, Jaeden, the Department of Defense thing, I cannot wait to get into. Oh my gosh, like that stuff. Anyway, we're going to save the tea for a little later. But the first thing that I sort of like that I guess jumped out at me, right, is this behavioral indicator prevalence. They call it that again. I'm going to say those words again. The behavioral indicator prevalence. Now, they're talking about behavior. So why is this so exciting? Jaeden, you and I have talked about, like, at AI Mindset, we just released, our course, which is all behavioral based training. It's, again, sort of like going out to some of the biggest companies in the world. But what we do is different because of this. Like, it is not a tool in the same traditional way. This, like, your brain has a hard time with this because it has a hard time treating software like a person. So why is this relevant to that? Well, with anything else, when you're talking about like Microsoft Office 360 or something like that, I'm not talking about Copilot, I'm talking about 360. In big companies, they measure proficiency, right? So at the business school at Stern, at NYU Stern, we measure people's proficiency in certain tech, in certain things like that, right? But they're not using the word proficiency. They're using the word behavior because it's not a proficiency. So what they found was that the number one sort of like essentially almost like indicator of like a power user is like they're defining and iterating. And Jaeden, just two more words on this, right? Because that's 85.7% of people who are like, that's sort of like the number one like standout. The next one down is like clarifies goals before asking for help, then provides examples of what good looks like, specifies format and structure needed, sets interaction mode. But even just those four, I'm going to say them again because this is what power users do, everybody, okay? Iterates and refines, clarifies goals before asking for help, provides examples of what good looks like, and specifies format. None of that is prompt engineering. None of that is assign it a role. None of that it is just, what do you hear in that? What do you hear? I'll tell you what you hear. You hear somebody that is good with working with people. Those are the qualifications of a good manager, of somebody who creates good work. You iterate and you refine, you clarify goals, you provide examples, etc. These are not tool goals. These are not software goals. These are not understanding algorithms and formulas. These are how well do you talk to a person. So Jaeden, to me, it's interesting that Anthropic is sort of like, kind of like really putting this out there, being like, listen, if you're good with working with people, you're good with working with Claude and other large language models.
100%. And I think if you use a lot of AI tools, this is something that I have started realizing recently, specifically, for example, like when I'm vibe coding with something like Lovable, if you give it a prompt of a tool that you want it to build, and this is exactly like if you were a manager talking to someone on your team to help you with a project, it's the first thing it's going to do, instead of just like jumping in and making a rough draft and spitting it out, it's going to ask you 5 follow-up questions. Like, okay, so just to be clear, do we want to do X? Do we want to do Y? Do we want to do Z? And like for Lovable, you'll go step through those 5 steps and it will create the thing. That is like, and basically the way that it is acting is how you should act in like using that tool. And obviously the team at Lovable has custom designed this. So when you give it a prompt, it's got these follow-up questions that it will work with. And we've seen this with ChatGPT as well in the past, but basically you doing those different steps when you're using an AI model or when you're trying to build something or trying to use something, that's the most effective way. And of course, like you mentioned, this isn't just for AI models, this is for humans too. I mean, becoming clear on the steps so everyone's on the same page, like that's how you get good results. But it's interesting, it translates directly to these AI models, and I feel like these AI models are so good at this point. It's not like, how do I become better at using AI? That's not the question we should be asking ourselves today. It's, how should I be better at managing people in general, managing projects in general? Everything we've learned in our careers is just directly applicable to AI. So I love that, and that's a great report from Anthropic. The other thing that I was super excited about coming out of Anthropic was the fact that they have now acquired a company called Vercept. Now, this is not a company that a lot of people, I think, have heard about. And the reason for that is that Vercept is a computer use company. So essentially, they're helping, essentially, it's, like taking over your screen and doing things. Computer use is like all of these tools that take over your screen, they click around and do things. It's kind of like this concept of agents that we always had. The thing that I'm excited about as far as Anthropic getting better at this, I currently use Anthropic's Google Chrome extension. It's a sidebar. It's amazing. I tell it to do something like this. This might mortify developers, but recently I was vibe coding a tool that I use to help with my podcast production and scheduling. And I had a limitation in this tool that I've created. It couldn't publish 2-hour-long podcast episodes. Like my backend wasn't built. I mean, when I say my backend, I don't even know what that means, right? I am not a developer. It built it for me, but it was informing me your backend is not capable of doing this. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? And I was on Lovable, and it was like, oh, well, you need to go set up like a Google Cloud and go into like the control console and like put in this code and do this stuff. And I was like terrified, of course, because I have no idea what's going on. I go to Google Cloud, Connor. I am not joking. I open Anthropic's Google Chrome extension as a sidebar. I copy and paste all the instructions that Lovable gave me to that. And I'm like, do this on my Google Cloud account. It goes, it clicks around, it sets the whole thing up. And now my tool can publish 2-hour-long podcast episodes. Do I know how? No. Is that good? I mean, if it's a tool for myself, I'm not too concerned. I'm not, trying to sell this to the enterprise or anything. It's just a personal tool. But at the end of the day, the reason why I think I'm excited about this and many other projects is these models get better and better, these computer use. Even if you are not an expert, even if you don't know anything about a topic, using these tools to control your screen, take over and get stuff done. Like you just ask ChatGPT, what do I need to send to my developer? It gives you the response. You give that to a computer use tool or my financial advisor or my XYZ, like fill in any job role, and it takes over your screen and does it. I am beyond excited about this capability.
It's unbelievable. And the really cool thing about it is, Jaeden, I love how you brought that back to, how people are using it every day, because it's true. Like I do the same thing. I use Claude's extension in Chrome, and it's just amazing. I'm like, I can't, and the most basic stuff, but I'm like, I just can't figure this out. Now, where I think it falls down is in doing things that you could do much faster, right? So for example, like one of the things that they you kind of like illustrate a lot, and even in our course, I think we kind of like illustrate the fact that it can like find you flights and things like that, right? The truth is, I find flights way better than Chrome is good, because you sort of like see it actually filling this in sort of like slowly. I'm like, dude, just go. However, on other things like what you're talking about, like I was on Google Drive, and it's funny because I was using Claude in Google Drive, but I was like, I can't figure out this file path, and it just did it, and then it downloaded all the files for me. It did everything I needed to do in 2 seconds. This is what Ethan Mollick talks about in terms of jagged frontier, right? Some things it does well, but the reason why Vercept I think is so interesting is if it can speed up or lower the latency, maybe like sort of say like of it be able to bounce around your computer. That is something that I think has been probably been a little bit of a drag on adoption. The fact that like it's just like it doesn't happen quickly. We had Logan Kirkpatrick on whenever it was, sort of like just recently, and he was talking about that too. You asked him, what's the thing you're most excited about? And he's like, speed. He's like, just like speed. I think speed like really, really kind of tears things up. Excited about that. Jaeden, come on. Department of Defense. Like these stories that are sort of like making the news right now. It's like this crazy standoff. And the background of all this, guys, is Anthropic is a safety company. Anthropic came online. Anthropic, Dario and Danielle Amade left OpenAI and took some people with them because of safety. And now Anthropic's getting a little bit crushed on the safety front, but like now they're being asked to sort of like, because they're such a powerful model, well, are they collaborating with the Department of Defense, or maybe it's not the Department of War? But anyway, point being, Jaeden, there's like drama that's making like newspapers these days. So talk us through that.
Okay, Reuters was reporting on it, and this is just the wildest thing ever. But essentially what's happening is U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, I believe he actually summoned Dario Amadeo to come and do like a meeting, and they basically had this meeting scheduled out where they were talking about removing safeguards. Anthropic, I think, put up a bunch of safeguards on their models, so when the Department of Defense is using them, they don't have certain capabilities or functionality that Dario says is against their kind of terms.
Department of Defense, by the way, has to love that, right? It's like, sorry, guys, You can't. You like, darn, there must have been.
Oh yeah, this just it bothers them to no end. So
It's
that
just
is
crazy. And that's the other thing with like hegseth, like these are not sort of like reasonable people in the Department of War. They are literally called the Department of War. They are not going to be like let anybody in who's like telling them they have to be
they're like,
safer.
oh, Silicon Valley, like tech startup, you don't want it because of your okay. So, anyways, this is it's hilarious. I'm sure the resolution of this is going to be. If I had to put my money on it, there's probably a poly market bet. I'm gonna bet the Department of Defense probably wins in here, but it's an interesting case and an interesting argument. So I'll share kind of what's going on. Essentially, um, I'm not exactly sure at the moment that this was flagged to Anthropic. I know that the Department of Defense said when they did their Nicolas Maduro raid, they were using Anthropic's Claude
Yeah,
to
yeah,
help
yeah.
conduct the raid, which was crazy. And I mean, obviously, like the raid was a well-oiled machine. Like no one died and no Americans died, and they achieved their objective. So like that's pretty crazy to think Anthropic was helping to power that. What Anthropic specifically said they don't want to do, and that like on paper, so I don't know the implementation of anything, but on paper I agree with Anthropic. They're like, we don't want mass surveillance of U.S. citizens, and we don't want our technology to be used for autonomous drones, right? And I mean, I think like a lot of people, autonomous drones powered by AI is the most terrifying concept. So like theoretically, I'm like, yeah, that sounds horrible. And also mass surveillance of US citizens. I mean, I'm just a huge, like, I hate the Patriot Act and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, no surveillance for me. I'm all on board with that. How it plays out, I think, is on, and like what they say on paper versus what they're actually the guardrails or what the Department of Defense can do. The Department of Defense basically said that if they don't, I think they have a deadline of 5 p.m. Friday. And if they don't basically take off the restrictions and let them use it for whatever they want, they're going to classify Anthropic as a supply chain risk, which is typically saved a classification saved for like foreign adversaries. So it's pretty intense, and it's a battle going on right now.
I mean, it's a battle, and we can sort of like wrap it up. Jaeden, I'll give you the last word on this, but like, listen, Anthropic is a phenomenal company, right? I mean, like, but they really do. They're sort of like the Volvo to a certain extent, right? I mean, like they're always the safety company for a long time. I don't think people think of them as safety. I think of them as code now, right?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, guys, if you have not tried AI Box of late, Jaeden's company AI, it has blown up. Jaeden was showing me the numbers, which Jaeden, I apologize. Maybe you didn't want me to say this over the airwaves here, but AI Box is like absolutely exploding. And that's because sort of like, first of all, I think you like redid the interface but mostly like this idea that you can sort of like use all, trade, do your workflows like inside this thing. But my favorite thing is like comparing the models, all that kind of stuff. You have different pricing tiers, everything else. Absolutely phenomenal. So try out AI Box.ai. The thing about Anthropic is that like right now they're a phenomenal model, right? And like, but the idea that they're going to be classified as like as a danger to society is absolutely nuts. Jaeden, I'll give you the last word on this. Like, how are you seeing all this playing out?
So this is what I think the interesting part with this is at the end of the day, I'm sure a lot of people are asking like, why is this even a question? Why does the US government have to force Anthropic to let them use their tool? Like in a free market, why don't they just go find another supplier? This is the interesting thing. Anthropic is the only AI model that is flagged for use by the Department of Defense for like the top secret, basically all of their confidential projects. It's the only one that's been approved so far, and you know how like approvals on these projects are pretty insane. So I think right now the DoD is negotiating with Google, XAI, and OpenAI to be other models. But in the meantime, it feels like they're kind of stuck in a lurch because they just got these like safeguards put on by the company they're using. I think inevitably what will happen is they will make deals with Google, XAI, and OpenAI, and probably Anthropic to some degree if their public spat hasn't just like soured them too much. But they'll make multiple, and if anyone puts any guardrails on any one particular use, they'll just switch to another. So I think that they'll kind of have access to all of them. I mean, it's sort of a lesson on a national scale of not putting all of your eggs in one basket. And it's also tricky because Anthropic is perhaps the best model for some of these reasoning tasks. So like you understand why you want to go with the best model, but yeah, the Department of Defense should probably not put all of their eggs in one basket. And I think they'll have learned from this lesson for the future. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. This one's been a ton of fun. We appreciate all of you, and we appreciate all of the reviews you guys have given. So if you haven't already, make sure to write a rating and review on the show. It helps it out a ton, and we'll catch you guys all in the next episode.